Hey, this is Jeff, and welcome back to the no-kill run of Broken Steel. Running errands for the Brotherhood has turned out to be surprisingly profitable, so Luce is heading straight back to the Citadel to see what kind of special assignment Tristan wants her for. She would have been a little happier last week if he had let her hang out outside the relay station and download the data after the facility was secure, but hopefully whatever he has in mind this time is less dangerous.
Nice work back there. Let's hope the scribes can do something useful with the information you retrieved. Unfortunately, we don't have time to sit around and wait for the analysis. Based on what I've seen of you so far, there's an assignment I believe you're well suited for.
Luce doesn't need psychic intuition to tell that Tristan isn't going to be offering the same kind of side deals we got from Bigsley. Assuming you're right about the mission being perfect for my skill set, I might be ready for more. What do you need?
With the setbacks the Brotherhood has suffered, we find ourselves in a difficult position. All our available resources need to be positioned for the inevitable counterattack from the Enclave. At the same time, we believe we may have developed a tool to help our chances of victory. But with everyone needed to help defend against the Enclave, we have no one to send on a recovery mission. So, I'm going to have you travel to the Olney Power Works to secure some tech for us.
I've passed by Old Olney a couple times, and the length of the trip bothers me less than the fact that it's swarming with deathclaws.
I need you to go there, and quickly. That's the best chance to locate a key piece of experimental equipment, called a Tesla coil. Information we've gathered suggests it's the best place to look for one, and for what the scribes are cooking up, it's absolutely essential. If you can find one, get it back here right away. We don't have much time.
If you take a different path through his dialogue, he says more explicitly that with Liberty Prime out of action, they need the Tesla coil to make an anti-aircraft weapon to deal with the Enclave's vertibirds. Anyway, while asking him for pay up front didn't seem like a good idea, we still might be able to milk the gig for something valuable if we frame it in terms of making victory more likely. Old Olney is a dangerous place. Have any equipment that might help me?
Check with Scribe Valancourt. She's been researching some of the Enclave technology we've recovered. From what I understand, she may have come up with something.
All right, I'm on it.
I'll be waiting for that Tesla coil, if you can find one.
I'm not actually going to talk to Valancourt. If you ask what she has, she automatically gives you a Deathclaw control scrambler, which makes the Enclave's weaponized Deathclaws friendly toward the player. While that sounds good on paper, there are a few problems. And let's be sneaking when we get there. First, it doesn't just make the Deathclaws ignore the player, it turns them actively hostile toward the Enclave. Setting aside the plot holes in the technobabble when she explains how it works, Luce has certainly had companions who did a bit of killing on her behalf when it was necessary. But between the stealth suit and the dart gun, hopefully that won't be necessary. Maybe more importantly, it eventually kills the Deathclaw. Neither of which bumps up the player's kill count, but Luce isn't comfortable with any of that, and since there's no way to turn Valancourt down once you start the conversation, we'll just take it as read. Going around the south side of town is probably safer. There are two ways into the Olney sewers, one of which is a nasty surprise the first time you run into it, especially if you're not doing this mission at the time. And maybe going around to the south isn't safer. I wasn't going to use that entrance anyway, even though I usually do. If you're planning to kill the Deathclaws, I think it's safer, because you can retreat if it turns out you bit off more than you can chew. But since we're not killing anything, it'd require dodging Deathclaws through the entire sewer level. And speaking of running away, let's get the dart gun ready. If we get spotted, the taser fist would only buy us a few seconds at a time, but the dart gun will let us outrun them as far as we need to. In fact, there's a case to be made that we shouldn't be completely dependent on the stealth suit. We should still practice good sneaking technique, like avoiding line of sight and so on, and I'll absolutely try to do that while we're in the sewers. But good. Looked right at us, and not a flicker on the detection meter. The whole undetectable unless we bump into something theory has been pretty solid, but if it turned out Deathclaws are an exception, I'd much rather discover that out here in the street than down in the sewer. Anyway, the unpleasant surprise I mentioned should be right around the corner and down the street a bit. Nothing behind us. Good. There's a sewer grate in front of a building that looks like it was maybe City Hall or a courthouse or something. This is all part of the vanilla game, by the way. The DLC adds a door in the Olney sewers that leads to the new DLC areas, but the sewers themselves are otherwise pretty much unchanged, as is the Olney exterior. No death claws about to wander over and bump into us. Anyway, this sewer grate is a trap. And there are only 2 of them in the whole game, so it's easy to overlook it as part of the scenery and to miss that there's a door down there, especially if you're fighting or running away from a pack of death claws. The door to the DLC area is locked with a key until you start this mission, so if you fall through the sewer grate while you're just randomly exploring, or if you don't have the DLC, you have to get all the way through the sewers to escape. Well, if you killed all the death claws on the surface before you fell in, you can fast travel out of the hole. But if running away from angry death claws is why you fell in the hole in the first place, like I said, it's a nasty surprise. Also, like I said, I think coming in the other way is safer if you're willing to fight the death claws for XP and loot, because you can retreat back to the surface if it becomes necessary. But this one is better for our purposes today, since the door that leads to the DLC areas is right around the corner. There is loot commensurate with what you'd expect from a dungeon full of death claws. There's a mini nuke, a quantum, several elite tier weapons, including a nuke launcher, lots of random loot containers, and the prototype medic power armor. None of which Luz would be willing to risk exploring the whole place for, even if she knew they were there. And she doesn't. And right here's the door to the DLC areas. Well, ladder.
What the? How the hell did you get in here, Smooth Skin?
I'm looking for Olney Power Works. You know where that is?
Oh, yeah. Sure thing. Just right through here. Only there's a few death claws down here that might have other ideas. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do. Which begs the question, why are you down here?
Look, this wasn't how it was supposed to go down. It was a good idea at the time, you know? Figured we'd try and set ourselves up down here. Just like Underworld, only better. Who's gonna bother a bunch of ghouls living underneath old Olney, right? So, we get down here, we start knocking some walls down. And the next thing you know, we're getting our faces chewed off by death claws.
Luz doesn't want to be a total downer, but she doesn't really expect them to help. And she's certainly not going to threaten them. Look, if you guys can give each other a boost getting out of the hole, I strongly recommend going that way. Otherwise, I don't like your chances.
Yeah, well, we're not gonna get a better chance than this, so we're gonna take it. Me and Kid are getting the hell out of here. If you're not coming, then good luck to you.
Wint and Kid are a nod to the assassins in Diamonds Are Forever, which was my favorite Bond movie when I was a kid, mainly because it was really heavy on the gadgets and had an overtly sci-fi premise. And the car chase, which probably seems pretty tame by today's standards, but it's 100% real stunt driving, on location, in a muscle car that isn't exactly nimble in the way Bond sports cars tend to be, so it's still pretty cool. One thing I've seen people trash the movie for, where I think they're missing the point, is there's a fight with 2 female henchmen toward the end of the movie, and they complain that Bond kind of miraculously beats them just because he's Bond, they're women, and the director had the fight end in the pool because he just wanted an excuse to show 2 hot women in wet bikinis. But that's not really how it goes down. Bond is getting his ass kicked, and if there's one consistent detail about his backstory through the entire franchise, it's that he's a naval officer, scuba diver, underwater combat expert. Taking the fight into the pool gives him an edge that might be his only chance. So rather than being overtly sexist, I think it was an early and admittedly rare attempt at the exact opposite. Of course, now, I don't know if it's filmmakers assuming the audience is stupid so they beat you over the head with a message, or if it's because audiences think subtlety is cringe, but Yeah, I can see why contemporary audiences wouldn't get it. And speaking of plot holes or the lack thereof, what I meant about the Deathclaw control scrambler is, it's not entirely clear whether the Enclave headsets actually control them, as in allow operators to actually give them instructions, or if it just prevents them from attacking Enclave personnel, making them think they're all part of the same pack or something. But the scrambler is definitely a passive effect, in terms of both lore, how Valancourt explains it, and gameplay. Since it doesn't make the weaponized Deathclaws a companion you can give it instructions, it just changes the faction relationships so they aren't hostile to the player. And I'm looking for a specific guy. I think this is him right here. Yeah, Dunbar. He has a note that gives a little more detail about what Wint said, wanting to start a new ghoul settlement here, like Underworld, but without the nasty neighbors. Little did they know the neighbors here were even worse. Anyway, since Deathclaws are naturally hostile to literally everything, and the Scrambler overrides the Enclave signal, regardless of how that works, it makes sense that they would then attack any Enclave troops nearby. But it doesn't make them target the Enclave specifically. If we had taken it, there's an optional objective to test it at an Enclave field station before going into Olney. And there's an epic jump scare right here. If a Wasteland encounter spawns nearby the Enclave outpost, the Deathclaw will run off to attack that too, even if it's something that isn't hostile to the player, like creatures affected by the Animal Friend perk. And sure, I could come up with some plausible reason the control signal might protect all Enclave personnel, but the Scrambler only protects the player, except that the Scrambler makes the Deathclaws friendly toward your companions. Come on now, you just ate. Can't be interested in me. I think I will have some of that arm for dessert. Anyway, the idea that an override that Valancourt herself describes as kind of brute force is sophisticated enough for the Deathclaw to decide, well, that dog really likes her, so it's okay, but that dog only likes her a little bit, so I'm going to kill it. I just have a hard time swallowing that. There's some loot on this shelf, but it's a surprisingly tricky jump. And that's why. There's a gap you can't see behind the tall cabinet, so you need to land on top of it and then jump again. Try that one more time. There we go. 4 attempts for a little bit of energy weapon ammo. Great use of time. I had it in my mind there were some sugar bombs up here, but apparently not. Anyway, we need to get through this hospital. Pretty good source of medical supplies and chems if you kill the Deathclaws and have a chance to loot in peace. You don't often get to see them doing their relaxing animations. So there's an item in the plus column for doing it all stealthy and non-violent style. There are multiple floors, some of them collapsed, but plenty of holes in the walls, so it's not a total maze like the Dunwich building. I'm still probably going to get lost, though. What I'm looking for is a hole in the floor that looks down on a boiler room. If we drop down there, we're right around the corner from what looks to me like the basement of an adjacent building. We need to go through there to get to the power works. Unfortunately, I think the room we need is behind that Deathclaw. Can we get through here? Maybe. Maybe not. I think this is it. Yeah. Get down there without breaking my legs. Could just walk down the ramp, but there's a Deathclaw over there. There we go. The motorcycle's a landmark. The bathtub's a landmark. Some weapons and ammo in the tub. First aid kit, too. Anyway, there are signs of somebody making a stand against the Deathclaws in this room, which may or may not be where Dunbar's people broke through. For whatever reason, I always had the impression the Deathclaws were already in the hospital when they dug in from the sewers, in which case this must have been some previous group of survivors, but there's nothing that seems like conclusive evidence either way. Like, the last lootable body you see is in the jump scare. It's all skeletons from that point forward, but it might just be that the Deathclaws ate them down to the bone. If you don't have light step, this is nasty. There are several mines hidden under various bits of rubble. Well, that one's kind of obvious, but there's another one under a tire. No, under a fire extinguisher, which not only conceals it, but makes the explosion bigger. Now, this is the part that definitely looks to me like the basement of a different building. There's lots of miscellaneous loot and a workbench with almost everything you need to make virtually every homemade weapon you can have a schematic for, except a rad scorpion poison gland for the one that would really help in here, a dart gun. Is that worth the risk? Yeah. There's a little basement within a basement behind this gate. Another survivor shelter with some decent loot, and I'm pretty sure a quantum. No Deathclaws down here because, you know, the gate was locked. If there's one standing in the stairway when we're done looting, we might have a problem. Yeah, quantum. Little peek at the Deathclaw life cycle here. There aren't any juveniles or breeding adult variants like New Vegas, but it explains why Olney has such a heavy infestation and why the Enclave has an outpost to capture and weaponize them nearby. Another tunnel through rock means we're probably entering the basement of yet another building. Again, not sure if the connections were dug by previous survivors or the Deathclaws, or were just damage from the war, but it means we're almost out of Deathclaw territory. At the top of these stairs, there's a loading screen door. If you thought the only underground level was cool, from Dunbar's main camp, the hospital, the connecting basements, you ain't seen nothing yet. This is the Wilson building, and in addition to being one of a fairly small number of interiors that fake being exposed to the exterior, like the National Guard depot, it has a very cool platforming puzzle, which are also pretty rare in this game, maybe more so. The only enemies are Enclave troops, and with the transponder, they aren't enemies, so it should be safe to poke around a bit. You can hear the vertibird that landed them on the roof. See if we can get a look at that. There it is. And it is a real vertibird, not a static prop, so you can blow it up if you have a sufficiently powerful weapon. Or a .32 pistol with a ton of ammo and patience. Most of the Enclave troops are at this end, but again, shouldn't be a problem with the transponder. Yeah, green on the compass. Now, how do we get up to the top floor? Well, you can't get up to the top floor where you could see that there's not really a world outside, but you can get up to the one right under that. Do you go across the Deathclaw cage, maybe? You can probably tell I haven't done this in a while. Maybe. No, I don't think you can make that. Okay, I'm probably going to edit out the last 15 minutes of me saying "don't" and "damn it" about 50 times, but I think I've got it down now. Just climb all the way to the top of the rubble pile, so the first 10 times I was making it way harder than it needed to be. Go past the desks and the cabinets along the edge, walk up the first bit of rebar, turn around, go halfway down the other side, and jump to the top of the I-beam from there. That's the tricky part. And there we go. I'm pretty sure this is it. The jump to the very top floor is just too high, and like I said, they definitely don't intend for you to get up there because you can see there's no world outside, just a blank skybox. But you know me, I'm so tempted to try it anyway. And unlike a lot of these high-as-you-can-go places, we can actually jump when we're on top of the girder. Did that fall kill us? Something on the way down to break our fall, right? Yeah, that's not happening. But I am going to do it one more time, because there's still a mini nuke on the ledge right below the girder that you can't get by jumping from the next floor down. Well, not unless your timing is perfect. But this way, we should be able to drop straight onto it. Fallout 3 and New Vegas don't have a big reputation for platforming puzzles, probably because the jump ability is pretty rudimentary and there's no sprint, but when they put choice loot in places like this, it's no accident. And if you've been watching the channel a while, you probably know I'll try to make almost anything into a platform puzzle. Anyway, let's get out of here. The only power works is right around the corner. And that should be a walk in the park. Now, up one more floor. Hey guys.
Hello.
Ton of death claws in the basement next door. Why don't you try over there? The power works can be an absolute nightmare with sentry bots, turrets, and radiation traps like the ones we saw at the monastery in Springvale. Except not in a polite, hey, if you want to get irradiated, press this switch way. However, with high enough science skill, you can bypass the whole thing. Which I am going to do, because the cool bits at the end and the loot along the way is not worth the risk. Just hack this very hard terminal. There we go. Disengage lock. And now the door is open, which should bring us out right around the corner from the Tesla coil chamber. No enemies in this area, so it's safe to do a little bit of looting. Although the good stuff is in the chamber itself and the adjacent offices. And speaking of which, there it is. As you might guess, just jumping in and grabbing it is a very bad idea. This leads to the stairs down to the coil itself and the Skyrim door. Right there. You mercifully don't have to backtrack all the way through the Wilson building in the Olney Underground, but there is something interesting up here first. Yeah, this is it. Hack this terminal to unlock the door and disable security on the other side. At one end of the hall, the other end apparently, there's a tiny storage compartment with 2 laser turrets inside, which might seem like just a cruel joke. Except there are 2 high shelves with ammo boxes, and a little hint to look up there. And what's in them, if I can get the cursor on it, extremely rare alien power cells. These aren't the alien power modules for the weapons in Mothership Zeta, they're for the alien blaster from the base game. Which is stupidly OP, but there are only 3 places you can get ammo for it. You find some with the blaster itself, there are a few in an overturned truck in a crater near Fort Bannister, and there's a random event where a flying saucer explodes overhead and showers them over a wide area. So you'll basically never find them all without Dogmeat's help. And I do not want to be in here. This is where you'd end up if you can't get your science skill to 100 and you have to go the long way. Although, if this terminal disables the sentry bots, it might be worth poking our head in for a quick loot. Disengage security system. And it does not. Must just be for the turrets on this side. Oh well. To the Tesla coil. There are basically 3 ways to get it. First, just grab it, but as I said, that's a terrible idea. It's not a scripted kill, but it does do 300 hit points of damage, which Luce could survive, but it would hurt. And I almost forgot there are more alien power cells in this little side room. The second way is to use the emergency switches around the perimeter of the Tesla coil chamber. Each one you turn off reduces the damage a bit, down to 50 hit points if you use all 3. They're kind of easy to miss because you might think they're just part of the set dressing. Where am I going? There's the door. I'm not sure if these lights do anything. I know there's some kind of visual indication that it's working, but I don't think those are it. There's the Tesla coil. And here's one of the emergency switches, which might be your only option if your science skill isn't high enough. But this terminal, hard locked, triggering the failsafe shuts the whole system down, and now it should be completely safe to grab the Tesla coil. There we go, to the Skyrim door. Hopefully there's not a Deathclaw standing on the manhole cover. Good. Not sure how far away from town we'll need to be before we can fast travel. There were a couple on the compass, but they looked pretty far away. This good enough? Fingers crossed.
You found a Tesla coil? Excellent. I'll see to it that this reaches the scribes immediately. You've done good work, soldier. Are you ready for your next assignment? We don't have time to spare.
I'm good to go. What's next?
Based on the data you brought us from the relay station, we've identified where the Enclave is basing their operation. It seems they have a second base of operations at Adams Air Force Base outside of D.C. The only safe way to get there is through the presidential metro used by the government before the war. You're going to be on your own again for now. The rest of the Brotherhood will be providing a distraction so you can slip in undetected. Once you breach the presidential metro and get to Adams Air Force Base, look for the resupply crate. Inside, you'll find your new orders, and hopefully we can put a working Tesla cannon into your hands.
Don't bother on my account. You should probably assign it to a team that can actually use it. And I think... Yep, level up. Max out barter, and we won't have to lug around the roving trader outfit anymore. Put the rest in medicine. And once again, a level up catches me unprepared, so I might have to think about the perk for a minute. 30 extra hit points is a nice to have, but I think I'm going to follow a suggestion from the comments and take Contract Killer. Which I know might seem to make 0 sense for Luz because she'll never collect any bounties, but it has the secret benefit of preventing Talon Mercs from spawning when your karma is good. So we won't have any more unpleasant surprises like the fiasco at Rivet City a couple weeks ago. I mean, it wouldn't have prevented that particular fiasco because that bunch had already spawned way back in the no-kill run of the base game. Thanks to the comments for reminding me about that, too. I had just never gotten close enough to trigger their Force Greet package. But I set them in motion when I was gawking at the new water caravan content added by the DLC. Luce has never been to Pennsylvania Avenue, so... Well, for once, I think the Pip-Boy suggested route might actually be the best way to get somewhere. I mean, most of the time it's fine, but its advice can be sus when you have to go through multiple metro levels. But tepid sewers to Georgetown to Pennsylvania Avenue is pretty straightforward.
At your service.
This should be a lot more sedate than when I came through here during the Skills Dash series. That was absolute chaos. But with Animal Friend, we don't need to worry about the mole rats, and they should keep the raiders distracted long enough for us to slip by. Nice mole rat. This is the only potentially tricky part of Georgetown. Where's the map marker pointing? Oh, it wants us to go through Metro Central. There's an example of the bad advice I was talking about. Why would I go that way when Pennsylvania Avenue Metro brings us right out across from the White House Plaza? Anyway, I thought the super mutant with the minigun might give us some trouble in the narrow choke point, but he was... No, he's going to give us trouble on the open sidewalk. Oh, man. A little more attention on your surroundings, a little less on blabbing, maybe? Almost there. This lets us bypass the huge battle between the super mutants and the Brotherhood down the street to the east of here. If you're high enough level that a lot of them are overlords, the Brotherhood will get annihilated, but at level 19 they'll probably be okay. There are half a dozen metro access points down the length of Pennsylvania Avenue, but this is definitely the safest way to get here from outside the downtown ruin. Of course, when cars start blowing up, all bets are off who's going to win. Over here, there's nothing but a crater where the White House was. I'm sure there was some design conflict between wanting the player to be able to explore recognizable pre-war landmarks and the canon backstory that DC was obviously one of the places that would have been hit hardest by the nukes, since it was the capital of the country. Much like the Olney sewers, this part of the level is pretty much unchanged from the base game, except that they added a door leading into the DLC areas. I did a little trivia sidebar video a while back about 3 Easter eggs between here and our destination, so I'll put a link in the description, not go out of my way to point them out now. I didn't step out into the White House crater in that video, and it's generally a pretty bad idea because there are a bunch of ghouls and a ton of rads, but there is some pretty nice loot, and with the ghoul mask we should be able to grab it and go. Yeah, let's pop some Rad-X and check it out. If you don't have decent rad resistance, this can be a death trap if you get cornered fighting the ghouls. But what we're looking for is right at the top of these stairs. Some Radaway and 3 mini nukes. Nice. But what we're really looking for is right around the corner. The door to the presidential sublevel. We just have to sneak around some robots between here and the presidential metro proper. Now, this isn't where we cut through, but there is a first aid kit, so it's not a complete waste of time. Well, might as well loot all the containers since we're in here. The room that connects the 2 tunnels has a guaranteed quantum, but you never know what you might find in desks or filing cabinets. Anything with 0 weight is worth taking. Hello. Oh, I don't know how it's not touching us, but do not move. Oh, man. Okay, lesson learned. No more optional side rooms.
Currently, the presidential metro system is functioning at 20%.
Oh, holy crap! I was not expecting this to be the most stressful part of the trip.
Another glorious day in this man's army.
Now, this... Oh, no. Oh,
Warning.
well, there's MARGoT.
Unauthorized personnel will not be tolerated in the presidential metro. Please access this workstation and identify yourself.
The room I'm thinking of must be in the presidential metro proper.
Warning. Due to a major security breach, this system is on code red. Alert status. Prepare for security check. Attempting to identify local access user. Identification failed. This access point is restricted only to authorized personnel. Please identify yourself.
I don't know where the Senate ID is. I thought we hadn't reached it yet, but it must have been in one of the subway cars I didn't search. But with high enough science, we don't need it to bypass the speech check. Override security parameters. Assign current user highest clearance.
Please stand by. Override accepted. Clearance assigned. How may I assist you today?
Could you repair the train to Adams Air Force Base?
Negative. Repairs are currently impossible on the Adams Air Force Base train line. If the security breach is nullified, I will return to green status and allow the Sentinel unit to commence repairs.
Okay. Can I get some information on this security breach?
Information is available on that subject. Please specify.
I need more details. What's the breach all about?
Internal visual sensing equipment is detecting numerous unidentified persons in the southeast tunnels area. The individuals have damaged metro equipment and refused dialogue with our security units. In accordance with U.S. Security Statute A567/B, the use of deadly force has been authorized.
I'd like you to deactivate all of your security units.
Negative. All security units must remain active at all times. However, upon properly accessing this system, you have been marked as a friendly and should see no further hostility from said units.
Close enough.
Logging out. Have a good day.
Now, this next part is definitely doable without killing anything. And with the ghoul mask, it's completely risk-free. The only question is whether the security bots can kill all of the ghouls. They usually can, but it's up to the combat AI, so it's not guaranteed. There are a couple of ceiling turrets, so even if you're high enough level that a lot of the ghouls are reavers, the robots will probably still win. Well, the robots get shredded, but the only ranged attacks the ghouls have are the glowing one's radiation burst and the reaver's radiation blob, both of which the turrets are immune to. If we end up with all the robots dead and a couple ghouls left alive at the far end of the tunnel, we might need to take off the ghoul mask and bait them back into turret range, but at level 19, there should only be a couple bosses that are reavers. Fingers crossed, if most of them are glowing ones or weaker, the robot should be able to take care of it. Granted, it takes a while for a turret to wear down a reaver, but with a sentry bot helping, it shouldn't be too much longer. No, don't run up there. Its attention was on the turret. Oh, now you're dead. Oh, don't lead it away from the turret, you idiot. I don't know. The Reaver's only got 2 bars left on its health meter. If the sentry bot can keep its distance, it might get away with it. Down to 1. Oh. This is why I don't gamble. If I was betting on that fight, my money would have been on the Reaver. Good job. This is another part that had me worried. There are 2 ghouls behind this fence, and you can't get over there. Sometimes the robots ignore them. Worst case, we'd have to come back with RL3 to take care of it, but the robots are on the case this time. If the sentry bots don't blow themselves up with their missile launchers first. Maybe keep our distance. The combat AI is having a little trouble finding him line of sight. They got him. Now this is the room where you have to cut through that I was thinking of earlier. Somewhere in here there's a quantum. First aid kit. Won't say no. And that leads out to the other tunnel. There it is. Excellent. I'll try to remember to make one last trip around the map before the end of the run to have Sierra make us quantum pie, drop off sugar bombs with Murphy, blood packs for Vance, all the other miscellaneous fetch quest stuff I collect. Anyway, once the robots mop up the last few ghouls down here, we can go tell MARGoT the breach is contained. Sounds like that's it.
Another glorious day in this man's army.
Well, I think that's the repair bot.
Have a nice day.
Yep.
Do not interfere with security operations.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Welcome back. How may I assist you today?
Now, doing it this way would normally trigger a quest-breaking bug. But how's the security breach?
The previously reported breach has been suppressed. The metro system is now functioning within normal parameters.
Good. Can you repair the train to Adams Air Force Base now?
All security protocols have been lifted, and passengers may freely utilize any active transport systems as soon as all the repairs have been made.
But with the mod, it doesn't. I have to go now.
Logging out. Have a good day.
I'll go into more detail when I talk about technical stuff at the end, and I did a whole video about it a while back. I didn't do a bug fix at the time, I just showed how to fix it with a console command. The bug usually happens if any ghouls glitch out of the level, which has been known forever. But as far as I know, I was the first person to discover that the no-kill solution also triggers it, or at least the first to report it. But since console commands break immersion and might seem a little cheaty if you're doing a legit pacifist run, I fixed it for real in PAM. Now, I've been at it a while, and I don't want to have to save and quit halfway through the Enclave base, so I'm going to call it a day pretty soon. I'm going back this way because there's a Skyrim door right across from the subway car that takes us to the base. Oh, even better, we get to see the Sentinel unit actually do the repairs. I missed it in the video about the bug, so it's nice to finally get it on video. I mean, it doesn't have a special animation or anything. It just rolls over to the fuse box and the lights come on. I was just always kind of bummed that I was too late in the old video. I'll put links in the description to both of those videos, the Easter eggs and the MARGoT bug. And this is the control we use to start the train, and that does have an awesome pseudo animation for the subway ride. Little teaser for next week.
Another glorious day in this man's army.
Speaking of Sierra, there's a note at the top of the stairs that gives you a little backstory about Grady and the naughty Nightwear and triggers an unmarked quest to find its counterpart, the All-Nighter Nightwear, which is added by the DLC. Seems like something Luce might want to track down. The only problem with the Skyrim door is that it brings you out inside the Capitol building, which is swarming with super mutants, but the good news is that we're right around the corner from the rear exit into Seward Square. The bad news is that there's a big battle between Talon Mercs and super mutants the first time you enter the area, so it might take a while before we can fast travel. I think that airstrike might be added by the DLC, but I'm not 100% sure. Out front, there's a three-way battle between Talon Mercs, super mutants, and the Enclave, which Luce has also never gotten close enough to trigger. For being invisible, there's an awful lot of fire coming our way. Plasma flying over our head and ricochets everywhere. I really don't want to go any farther into Seward Square. Maybe we can find a quiet corner of the Capitol building. Good. All right, I'm going to sort some loot, get a rad scrub from the infirmary, and call it a day. If you bail out when I start talking about technical stuff, don't forget to like the video, subscribe and turn on notifications if you haven't already, and leave a comment if you have questions or suggestions. The root cause of the MARGoT bug seems to be a partially implemented feature that got cut before release. There are some really complicated scripts that keep track of a huge number of things that happen during the fight between the robots and the ghouls, most of which work as intended. Like if MARGoT marks you as a friendly, but you attack the robots anyway, they go back to being hostile, and the Sentinel unit won't repair the train for you. Plus a bunch of other stuff that isn't really relevant to this topic, like controlling when each wave of enemies spawn and so forth. However, there's also code that keeps track of whether the player helped contain the breach, starting with the on-death block for the Metro ghouls checking if they were killed by the player, and ending with a flag called Player Helped being set. I'm only guessing, but I suspect the game kept track of that because MARGoT was originally going to have another dialogue branch where she would have basically said, "You said you'd help, but you didn't, so screw you, I'm not fixing anything." Unfortunately, in the released DLC, that flag doesn't do anything except break the dialogue if all the ghouls were killed by robots or your companions. So the fix is pretty simple. There's code in the PAM support script for broken steel that just checks a vanilla flag which is set correctly when the attack is over, and if it is, it sets player helped to 1, so MARGoT's dialogue works as it should. And as usual, the support script stops itself once the DLC main quest is complete. Also, the bug that made the Enclave transponder stop working was a timing issue, but not in the way I was thinking. I previously didn't have a container ref on the block start statements, so the code was running whenever it was added to or removed from any container, not just the player. So, if you took it out of a locker, the onAdd block would run and set the Enclave to friendly because it was added to the player's inventory, but then the onDrop block would run and set them back to hostile because it was also removed from the locker's inventory. Rookie mistake on my part, but at least it didn't require any complicated delay logic to wait a few frames and set the faction relationships in the game mode block. I just had to set the optional container parameter on the onAdd and onDrop blocks to player, so the code only runs if it's being added to or removed from the player's inventory. And that's it. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon.